Hello everyone, Dolphin Oracle here, DO for short. Today I'm going to look at installing AntiX 13. AntiX is primarily Linux distribution, primarily meant for older machines or machines with limited hardware. Does run super great on newer hardware, but I am going to for the installation video, we're going to run this in a VirtualBox. I've set this up for 512 megabytes of RAM and 16 megabytes of video memory, so it simulates an older computer. Do have some acceleration options here enabled just because it'll work better on the machine that I am running VirtualBox on. So let's get this started. We'll take a look at the boot options from the LiveCD. Now you see we have the boot options from the LiveCD, several things: command line, root persistence, home persistence. These are persistence options if you're booting from a live USB that you can make if it's set up for persistence. You can do that after installation. Let's take a look at the options down here at the bottom. There is a help on F1 that shows you what the different modes and options are, along with some additional instructions and boot options and various other things. Also, we have the other options. We have one for language, where you can set your default language, one for your default time zone. We're going to put in New York here. You have some other options here depending on your computer. You can boot AntiX from the LiveCD all the way into RAM. It'll run fast. That's how Puppy Linux does it if you're familiar with it, and AntiX can do the same thing. There are some other options depending on your hardware needs. F5 sets you up a video mode. We're going to go with the default because it works fine in VirtualBox, but depending on your hardware you may want to try alternate video boot modes. And then also we have our default desktop environment, and you can see we have several options there. We are going to stick with the default ROX IceWM for this video, but there are other options there. Hey, it's a LiveCD. Play with them all you want. If you were making a live USB key, F7 would look different than it looks right now. F7 would have a save menu to save these boot options, so that if you were just making a live USB, you'd be able to take that. It would save all those options we just set, the time zone and the language and the desktop, to that USB key, and then you wouldn't have to set them every time you ran AntiX. Now I am running a LiveCD, so it's all read-only and that menu doesn't appear. So let's go ahead and hit enter. I thought those options down at the bottom bared showing, because not a lot of distributions will have those default options up front. And those options will carry through into the installation. Here we are going into the LiveCD boot. I know a lot of distributions hide the scrolling text there, but every now and then it's nice to see what the system's doing, so that's good. Okay, now we've got the IceWM environment up and running. Now I'm going to switch my VirtualBox to full screen because so it can show the whole AntiX desktop in one shot. It's a limitation of my monitor. It's just not quite big enough to show them both at one time. Okay, there we go. Now we're full screen with the LiveCD, still running in VirtualBox. You can see my little VirtualBox menu pop up. And you see we are running. We're using about 47 megs of RAM at idle off the LiveCD. Not too shabby. That's pretty darn good. If you look over here in the AntiX menu, we've got a terminal, file manager. This was right now set for ROX. Web browser, which is Iceweasel 22. It's Firefox, people. It's just with a different brand. The Debian guys go with take all the copyrighted Firefoxes out of it, and you're left with Iceweasel. Editor, screenshot utility. You've got all your applications here. I'm not going to go through all the apps just because there are a lot of them. This is a full distribution, and you can do almost anything you want right out of the box with AntiX. Some of the options may be a little different than you're used to seeing in other Linux distributions, but we do have the full LibreOffice suite going on, and as well as a lot of configuration options to help you get the most out of your system. Okay, we'll be covering some of these preferences and the AntiX Command Center in a later video. Alright, so let's just go ahead and get started with the install. So we're going to single click on the install. The password on the root password for the LiveCD is root. Now the AntiX installer, and this is new for 13, it's going to ask you which Debian repositories you want to use for future updates. And you can use testing, which is kind of the classical AntiX default setting, or you can get really crazy and go with SID and unstable. I'm going to stick with Wheezy and stable just because I'm more interested in security updates and the like than I am the latest and greatest. Besides, for a lot of the software, you can use the AntiX Meta Package Installer to install the latest and greatest. Okay, here we go. Selecting our repository, we are set to Wheezy, and now the default installer will run. We're going to read through some terms here. Not much here other than that, yes, we did adapt. AntiX does adapt some information, some utilities from the MEPIS system. AntiX was originally based on MEPIS, now it's based on Debian, built from scratch, but we still have some of the tools, including the installer. Read the terms, we'll go on. Now, it has here, choose your disk. I've only got one disk, so that's okay. Now, if you want to use gparted to set your partitions, you can. I've already set this disk up with a 2 GB NTFS drive and then a 5.5 GB ext4. That's what I'm going to install Linux to, and I wanted to set up this NTFS drive to show what it looks like when you do the custom install, because most dual boot, if you're dual booting, you're going to want to do the custom install. So if you want to wipe the whole disk, go ahead and hit the auto install, but if you're going to use keep your Windows installation live, or a different Linux distribution for that matter, go with the custom install on existing partitions. Now we're going to select, you see it says NTFS. We're going to select for the root partition a drive other than that because I don't want to nuke my Windows distribution. I do need it occasionally. So we'll flip over to the other drive that I designated. Swap partition, none or existing. I always select it. You don't have to. It'll pick it up. Home partition, I'm going to leave it on the root drive. You can set, if you have another free partition, you can set the installer to point to that as your home partition. Okay, we're going to go with ext4 for the file system. There's a lot of options, but honestly, for your home boot, your boot drive, your main system drive, I'm sticking with ext4. Alright, so we've got OK to format and destroy all data on the SDA5. That is this piece we picked, the partition we picked, so we'll go ahead and go with that. And SDA6 for the swap, absolutely. And here we go. Now you're going to get some thank yous for Anticapitalista, the founder, I guess you can call him, of AntiX, lead developer, head anti person. And also in these side panels, you're going to get some different information as the file system copies over. Look there, we're running 74, 76 megabytes of RAM while the installer's running. That's pretty good. Again, you're getting some more information here for repairing your installation. I am going to pause recording until the copy file system is done, but it won't take very long. It'll only take about 4 or 5 minutes in a VirtualBox. Depending on your hardware, according to this, 3 to 20 minutes. It usually takes me less than 10 to set up an AntiX install. Okay, we're back. We're almost done with the file system install. And as soon as it finishes the last 5%, which goes pretty well all at once, we'll be getting into some more options we need to set up with the installer. If you ever have any trouble with AntiX, feel free to set a post up at antix.freeforums.org. The guys are real friendly, and they'll do their best to help you out with their system. Okay, so we're going to install Grub so that it will boot. We're going to install that on the MBR. All that means is the master boot record of the hard drive. I always install it there, never have any problems. We're going to put it on the boot disk. Really, there's no option here unless you already have a bootloader that you want to use. And if you do, that's great, but you need to configure that yourself. Okay to install Bootloader. They give you one more chance. Yes. Grub install it. OK. Okay, now we're going to get common services to enable. All this is enabled by default, and if there's anything here you don't need, feel free to shut it down. I don't need Bluetooth, so I'm going to close Bluetooth down. It probably wouldn't hurt anything to leave it on, but I don't need it, so I'll turn it off. Here you put in whatever computer name you want, computer domain. Set it up for whatever environment you are working in. Okay, now we're going to set up our localization. I'm in the US and English US for the locale. My system clock uses local, and if you're dual booting Windows, yours probably does as well. I highly recommend setting the time zone from the grub boot menu we showed at the start of the video. And since we've already done that, I'm going to leave this blank just to prove a point. Okay, set up our username. And no, before anyone asks, you can't have my password. Okay. The root password is very important in AntiX because by default we don't use sudo for anything. We normally go super user or su at the command line to elevate to root privileges. So you have a separate password for root. Okay, and there you go. We're finished. Some closing points here in the help file and the reminder. One more reminder to check out the forums, and also I might add antix.mepis.org for some links to the wiki. Let's go ahead and click finish. It's going to ask if we want to reboot. And I'm going to switch out of full screen for a moment while we reboot because I get some graphic artifacts in full screen with VirtualBox. So now we're going to reboot, and there we are. Now we'll go back to full screen. I will say I did use the 32-bit version for this installation video. There is a 64-bit version available, and that is normally what I run on this computer. Put in the wrong username. There is a 64-bit version available, like I said, but it was a little hard on VirtualBox on this computer, so I had to go 32-bit to make the installation video. The installer is the same, the process is the same. You just end up with a kernel and system setup for the 64-bit processors, and you can access more RAM that way. So there you go. The installation's done. I will show you a couple of more things before we go. On the help, we have links to AntiX facts and live how-tos, the ROX manual, Fluxbox links, IceWM links, JWM links. JWM, by the way, being the same window manager that Puppy uses by default. Some application and links to some man pages. Tremendous amount of help files right in here. We also have some information in our in the default documents folder. Some history about who the package is named, the release is named after. So there you have it. Enjoy your system, and we'll touch base next on some things to do after you're done installing.